Kia ora and welcome to another video. My name is Johnny Hendrikus and I'm going to give you my top 5 recommendations for entry-level cameras for 2022. Now, full disclosure, I haven't been sponsored or endorsed or anything like that for this video. This is purely off my experience and my research. So let's jump right in. So before you spend a bunch of money on a brand new camera, there's a few things you should consider first. One, being what is it that you actually want to shoot? Do you want to shoot landscapes? Do you want to shoot portraits? Do you want to shoot product photography? You're buying this camera for your business. What is your motivation for buying a camera and spending the money on a camera? Cameras aren't cheap, so whatever it is that you're going to be buying, make sure that it fits with what you want to shoot the most. Another thing to consider is there's an old saying, and that saying goes, you date your bodies but you marry your lenses, meaning when you buy a lens, you're buying a lens to have it for life. You're buying into the camera company you want to stay with. Whereas when you're buying a camera body, the technology is moving so fast and it's always changing, so it's one of those things that you might actually end up upgrading in a few years' time. Whereas a lens stays quite true to its function, because the function of a lens relies solely on the development of our understanding of physics. The light can only refract in certain ways, and we're only able to achieve certain lens focal lengths and apertures based on where we are at, not me and you, but the guys making the lenses, their understanding of light physics. In my opinion, with my experience working with cameras over the last 5 years, the 35mm prime lens is that sweet spot between capturing a great landscape and a great portrait. Now, a 35mm isn't going to get you those beautiful wildlife or sport or racing shots, or anything that requires you to be a certain distance away or at the restrictions of a perimeter. You want to invest in a lens with a zoom of about 200mm minimum. 200mm minimum. 200mm minimum, and again. Put that in a wrap. But for that sweet spot entry-level good quality lens that has a bit of character, that is great under low light, has some really nice blur that you can use for both wide shots and detailed portrait shots, the 35mm truly is the sweet spot. So now that I've cleared that up, let me get into my top 5 entry-level cameras that I think would be a pretty good starting point for your journey into photography, and let's kick it off. Coming in at number 5 is the Panasonic G85 with a 12 to 16mm kit lens. You can buy this off Rubber Monkey for 1,200 bucks. I'm not being biased because I use Panasonic, but I love the way that they've laid out their menus. Their functionality is really easy to use. They're lightweight, the batteries last for ages, they shoot in 4K video, and boast a 16 megapixel micro four thirds sensor, which means they shoot pretty good photos as well, up to a resolution of 4,500 by 3,500 pixels. The only thing with the micro four thirds sensors is that they can struggle in low light. I used to rock the Panasonic GH5, and although it was a great little video recording machine, it did struggle with photos under low light. So if you're looking at taking this to parties or doing night photography, this probably isn't the camera for you. But for landscapes and videos and for daytime portraits and all of those kind of things, this camera is a pretty good place to start. If you would pair this with the Panasonic 35mm lens, you'd be looking at about an extra $700 to $800, although there might be some alternative camera brands that are making this lens for a slightly cheaper price. My number 4 would be the Sony Alpha A6400 mirrorless camera with the APS-C sensor, which is just a bit smaller than a full frame, but just a bit bigger than a micro four thirds, boasting a 24 megapixel sensor giving you 6,000 by 4,000 pixel images. They've got a flip LCD screen, which for me is an absolute make or break when buying a camera. The amount of times that you want to shoot photos over your head or like down below with those fixed LCD screens that you get in older cameras, you just can't keep an eye on the shot like you can with a camera with a flip screen. And that's what I love about most cameras nowadays, is that they all come with flip LCD screens. This one shoots in 4K up to 25 frames or 1080p at 100 frames slow motion, and you can pick one of these up for $1,600. Pretty good. If you were to buy that 35mm lens with the Sony, you'd be looking at an extra $750. So this would bring the overall package to $2,300. Not quite $2,000, but it's getting close. Coming in at number 3 would be the Canon EOS 200D Mark II, which is a good, reliable, straight to the point, cut the bullshit camera. They've been around for a while and are quite popular. They've got the EF mount, which means you can mount a whole lot of different Canon lenses and other company lenses that have been designed for the EF mount. It is still one of the most, if not the most popular mount in the camera world today, and there are tons of lenses on the market for you to connect to your Canon. The 200D has a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor that can shoot 4K video and take photos up to 6,000 by 4,000 pixels, and you can pick one of these up for around 1,200 New Zealand dollars. That's with the 18 to 55mm kit lens, but I don't really recommend these lenses are necessarily a good place to start, because they're not the lens that's going to make you fall in love with photography. If you pair this with the Canon EF 35mm, which you can pick up one of these for about $1,000, you'd have yourself a really good kit that you'd absolutely love taking. You'll take incredible images with, and all while buying into the Canon brand. So you're looking at around $2,100 to get into a good Canon. And my number 2 would be the Fujifilm XT200 mirrorless camera with a 15-45 kit lens for $900. Fujifilm quite often goes under the radar with a lot of their new release cameras. I think they're absolutely brilliant because they've been in the market for as long as any other camera company has. Right in the beginning, they were there with the Kodaks, they were there with the Canons. You know, they're a real stalwart of the camera world. And what I love about the Fujifilms the most is they stay quite true to their vintage aesthetic. They're an all-metal build, yet they've adapted modern functionality with their flip-out screens, got the 24 megapixel APS-C sensor. Bloody awesome cameras. So the shooting images up to 6,000 by 4,000 pixels, which is a good size to work with. They also shoot 4K video, and if you were to pair this with the Fujifilm 35mm f2, you can get one of these for $380 from Rubber Monkey. That would be a nice little package that you could pick up for just over $1,000. Pretty good, pretty good. Now the number 1. I'm going to continue on the Fujifilm love train right now, but I didn't actually use Fujifilm cameras. You know, I've been playing with them. I've had a couple of goes in them. I've got a couple of mates that have them, but I've never actually truly shot with one. But what I do know from them is that from an overall camera experience, the Fujifilm truly hits the nail on the head. All factors considered, the price, the lens availability, the quality of the image, the way that it feels and holds and looks and sounds, I think that the Fujifilm for me comes out on top. The XC30 has a 26 megapixel APS-C sensor, shoots images up to 6,000 by 4,000 pixels and records video up to 6K and 4K at a 10-bit quality, which is just as good as my $3,000 Panasonic S5. Go figure. So my number 1 recommendation would be the Fujifilm XT30 for $1,169, paired with the Fujifilm 35mm for $370. You'd have yourself a pretty nice kit for about $1,500. Again, I haven't been sponsored or endorsed or anything for this video. This is purely off my experience and my research for what I think is a good budget-friendly camera. And of course, if you've got any questions about this, you can drop them in the comments or flip me a DM on the gram. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for giving me your time and watching this video. I want to keep creating more and more tutorial videos like this, you know, as time goes on, and this is just the beginning to what I think is going to be awesome. So thank you so much. Ka kite, ngā mihi, and we'll see you on the internet.